Hi, welcome everyone to Plant-Based Pittsburgh. It's, as always, delightful to have so many people from so many locations here. I'm Sally Lipsky, and I'm pleased to introduce Phil, who is Ciarelli, who is I'm not supposed to call him an expert gardener, but he's really a very good gardener. He has also been a plant-based eater for how long, Phil?
14 years.
Yeah. And so he uses Instant Pot. We've done this before, and it's always a very popular program to do. And then we'll hear from Brittany, who will be making a dish for you. Know that tomorrow, all of you will get an email from me that it has a link to this recording and also has any of the handouts and recipes to it. So on that note, I will turn it over and thank you. Phil, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Let me get the presentation started here. Okay, today we're going to discuss the Instant Pot and its various forms and functions. I love my Instant Pot. I've been using it for the last 5 years, and I use it every day. I usually cook my breakfast in it. I start it the night before, and I'll put a cup of steel cut oats and 4 cups of water and maybe a 1/4 cup of lentils in there, and just set the timer for it to come on in the morning. And when I wake up, I've got my breakfast. And so it's very, very handy and nice way to work. Let's start off by just looking at some of the advantages and disadvantages of pressure cookers. On the right there, we have the typical stove top pressure cooker, and this is like an older model. And these older models were
Phil, do you have a PowerPoint that you're?
Yes. Can't you see it? Oh, wait a minute. All right, let me go back. Maybe I didn't share the screen. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Let's see. Let's try that. Okay. Can you see it now, Sally?
Yes. Yeah, I think we're good.
Right.
Thank you.
Let me start the slideshow again. Apologize for that.
That's okay.
Okay, we're good. On the right, you can see the older style pressure cookers, and they were dangerous sometimes, depending upon how you use them. And on the left is our Instant Pot as we know it today, and it has a lot of features that are really useful. So let's take a look at some of the differences between standard pressure cookers and the Instant Pot. And the biggest disadvantage of a standard pressure cooker is that you've got to babysit it. You have to turn the heat on, and then you have to wait till the pressure comes up, and you have to be there to do that. And if it comes up too fast, you got to turn it down, or if it's too slow, you got to turn it up. And I think this is the main advantage of the Instant Pot, is you don't need to do it. You can go do other things. Also, the heat input is determined by the maximum output of the burners and the heating elements. So that you had a jiggler on top of there, which was a weight which defined the amount of pressure that you could get in there. But if you exceeded the amount of pressure or temperature because of the BTUs that are coming up from your burner, that pressure had nowhere to go, and sometimes interesting things happened. To cool down that pressure cooker before you take the food out, typically you would run it under cold water to reduce the temperature and then reduce the pressure. But you never really know when it was completely safe to open it. And I can remember my mom, when I was young, opening up a pressure cooker and it wasn't completely vented, and boom, the food went all over the kitchen. So bad things can happen because you're guessing. There was really no indications, and you could get steam burns or, as I said, food ejection. The other disadvantage is there's no delayed start or keep warm. This is a nice feature of the Instant Pot. You know, after it's done cooking, sometimes when I have my breakfast done early in the morning, and if I want to get outside and do something, I can just leave it go for a couple hours and come back and eat it because it's warm and it's just ready to go. So those are really nice features. Now, the modern pressure cookers do have some advantages. They can cook at a higher pressure, which means that your food will be done faster, but you still have to get it up to temperature and you still have to cool it down. They cook at 15 to 17 pounds per square inch. And the modern pressure cookers do have safety features that the old ones did not have. And the old ones, this is a catastrophic failure of an old pressure cooker. If you can look, you can see the pan has been pushed down into the stove, took off part of the canopy there. And you can see it's an older style pressure cooker because it only has the one jiggler vent on top, but embedded in the ceiling. With the modern pressure cookers, you really don't have that. This is a Kuhn Rikon pressure cooker, and you can see they've got relief valves, 2 safety vents, primary and secondary vents. So you could use a modern pressure cooker without any fear of getting into the situation you had with the older ones, but it's just not as convenient as the Instant Pot as far as I'm concerned. With the Instant Pot, it makes it easy to cook whole grains, beans, potatoes, and other things in batches. And that's my main use of the Instant Pot. Besides cooking my breakfast every day, several times during the week, I will cook whole grains. In my 6-quart pot, I can get 8 pounds of potatoes, and I will cook them and put them in the fridge after they're done, and I'll have potatoes to eat all week with the rest of my vegetables. So it makes it very convenient for that kind of thing. How fast does the Instant Pot cook? This is an interesting question that confuses a lot of people. And the answer is it depends. You have a certain amount of thermal mass to heat up. So depending upon what you put in there, if you put like a lot of water in there, or like when I just said, I cook 8 pounds of potatoes, it takes time for that mass to come to a temperature where enough pressure is generated to reach the set point. So cooking times may vary, and a lot of people buy these pots and without doing research and understanding this difference between cooking time and cooking cycle. And it may take 5 to 20 minutes before you start cooking, in addition to the cool down time. So you need to plan ahead if you're like trying to set a time for a meal, to take that into consideration. But the good thing is, once the cooking is done, it'll keep warm for you, and you don't really need to worry about it. The Instant Pot pressures are lower than the standard pressure cookers. On the low pressure setting, they run from 5 to 7 pounds per square inch. And on a high pressure setting, they're around 10 to 12 pounds per square inch. So they do cook a little bit slower than the other ones, but it's really not significant. I mean, it was from some of the information that I saw, it was ranging between 5 and 8 minutes or something like that. So let's take a look at what you get when you get the Instant Pot. You've got this base unit here. They've got little teeth on the side where your lids engage. There's a sensor in the bottom. When you put this inner liner pot in there, it lets it know that it's ready to go because it's got that weight there. The inner pot is stainless steel, which I like, rather than the coated pots where it can flake off over time. Um, and then you have the lid, and it has a handle on top and handles on the side. Um, Then you have a steam release valve. So if you want to release the steam, you can rotate that valve and the steam will come out. And a lot of steam comes out. And so you don't want to use this like stick it underneath your cabinetry and things like that, because you're going to get a lot of condensation on there. There's also a float valve on there, which is a pressure indicator. And this varies from some of the models, and I'll go into a little more detail in the next slide. On the side, there's a little plastic container there to collect condensation. There's a little ring around the Instant Pot where the stuff, steam can condense, and it will go into here, and then periodically you need to empty it. And then you've got some trivets for steaming. If you want to keep some things out of the liquid and off the bottom of the pot, you can use that. The downside of these trivets is they're not, the tops do not come up, the handles don't come up very far. And some people put aluminum foil around them, and then after the cooking cycle, they can pick them up. And I take a coat hanger sometime, I bend it, and I have a couple of them, and I just can lift that steamer trivet up. And but that's one small disadvantage. So there's, this is the float valve here. And when it's in the up position, it is telling you that the pot is still pressurized. And there's a couple different models. I mean, my model, I have the Duo model, and it's 5 years old, and it's a little bit different than that. In fact, mine, when my float valve is in this position here, but even with the top of this surface here, that means it's pressurized. And when it's not pressurized, it drops down maybe like about 1/4 inch. So, but it performs the same function, just letting you know that there is pressure in there. And it also performs a major safety function with the pot. This is what the float valve looks like. It's metal, and it has a silicone gasket on the bottom of it. And the surface area of this gasket, the diameter of it, controls at what pressure it will rise and seal. When you first start cooking with the Instant Pot, this is in the down position, and you will start to see steam vapor coming up through this float valve. And it will continue to do that. It will start to come up more rapidly as the temperature rises. And then it'll get to a point where this will push up and then make a seal, and then it should stop as the cooking process continues. But another major function of this float valve is that it will engage a locking pin that prevents you from opening the Instant Pot when it's under pressure. When this rises up, this section here engages that pin and locks it in place so that it can't be opened. And this is the locking pin that I was referring to. It's on the side there. And so that's a very important function. Also, we have a sealing ring here, which is silicone rubber. Silicone is a very good sealer, and it's pliable and works well at fairly high temperatures. There have been some issues. Some people complained about odors being infused into the ring sometimes, and you can take this ring off. It just pops right out. You can put it in the washer and your dishwasher and wash it. And you should do that periodically to keep it clean and to maintain a good seal. These are two styles of the anti-block shields to prevent food from getting up into the space where the venting occurs. This is the older style. This is what I have on my pot, and this is removable. You can pull this off, and you can see the bottom of the vent valve that I showed you before, and the float valve. And you should do that periodically to keep those things clean. The newer pots have the float valve exposed, but they still have the shield over the vent portion of the vent valve. This is the vent valve here, and you can pull this right off. And there's a safety function in here too. If the pressure does get too high, it can lift also. And we'll cover the safety functions in a little bit later. But you can rotate that valve to let the steam out. And then there's two types of releases you can do with a pot to get rid of the steam. The first one is like a quick release function. And when you do that, you will get, like I said, a lot of steam. You will get an aerosol. There'll be droplets of water in there that are hot. And it's not a bad idea to use a spoon or something like that. Or you can do it with your fingers if you're pretty quick. I mean, I do all the time. But a large volume of steam, when you pressurize this, there's a lot of volume in there. I mean, like in the summertime, I'll take my Instant Pot and put it on the porch and heat it up. And then if I'm cooking something like potatoes, when I want to do a quick release, I can just vent it outside. In the wintertime, I don't mind so much because the house is so dry and the humidity is so low. So these are some, and let's discuss some of the settings that you see on the pot. They give you a lot of settings. And this is the standard layout. And some of this nomenclature varies with your model. Like I say, mine is a little bit older. So it'll have a manual button instead of pressure cook. But what you can do is when you press either manual or pressure cook, the default is it goes to high pressure for 35 minutes. And if you're in the manual mode and you set that, like I set mine for 20 minutes, it will remember that. And next time I go to manual, that's where it will come up at. But by toggling this, you can press these buttons again, and you can change it to lower or high pressure, or you can also use the plus and minus keys to change the time. So both of those things can be toggled. Now they have a soup mode, which defaults to 30 minutes at high pressure. And again, all these buttons are the same, so I won't go through the details, but if you press it again, you can change the time or the pressure from high to low, which will change your cooking time. They also have a meat and stew, which we're not using, of course, but if you're cooking for other family members, it defaults to 35 minutes. And beans and chili are about the same, 35 minutes. If you're cooking dry beans, if you want to soak them, and I old fashioned, I guess I still like to do that, it'll reduce the cooking time by half. The poultry setting on there is about 15 minutes. And then the rice setting is set for white rice. So it's low pressure at 10 minutes plus a natural release. And natural releases would just when, the cycle is done, the pot will go to keep warm, and the pressure will drop as the temperature falls. And when the float valve drops, then you can open the pot, but you don't really release the pressure manually. Now they have a multi-grain setting that you can use for brown rice oats, which is 40 minutes at high pressure, toggling to more, or 45 minutes warm soak and 60 minutes high pressure. So you can use that. Porridge, there's a guy that invented this is a Canadian, so I guess that's the term that they use, but basically it's old-fashioned oats or steel cut oats, and it defaults to 20 minutes at high pressure. Now you have a steamer setting, which defaults to 10 minutes at low pressure, and you can use a quick release, and I use this a lot. There's a slow cook function that has no pressure, and you can open the vent release while that you're using that function. And you can toggle between 3 different temperature ranges. And some people have had problems with this because they're used to they have a slow cooker at home that they use, and the temperatures may be different. So what you want to do is, if you're going to try to use this as a slow cooker, take a look at the temperatures on your high and low settings on your slow cooker that you have, and then match it with what they have here. There's a saute function. You can take the lid off, and it'll default for 30 minutes when you push that. And it's nice if you're making things like a lot of times when I make chili, I'll take and put some garlic and onions and peppers and other things in there and saute them before I'll go ahead and add the tomatoes and the beans and so forth. And but it is important to deglaze the pan, because you will get a burn error if the stuff burns starts to stick to the bottom of the pan and the heat transfer is impeded, because this thing is looking at how long it's taking for the temperature to rise. There's also a yogurt setting, which you can make like soy yogurts and so forth under no pressure, and it defaults to like 8 hours. There's a keep warm setting. So when you're done with your cooking time, it'll go down to keep warm, and you can vary the temperature at which keep warm functions. So it can be, the normal is 145. You can make it like 135 if you think that's a little bit too hot, or you can go up to 167. And you can turn it off and on. You can set a timer there to do that function, go completely off. A delay start is one that I use a lot. It displays a number of hours and toggles to minutes. You can go up to 24 hours delayed start in 10 minutes. And some people find this confusing. Whoops, let me go back. Some people find this confusing because they think it's like setting the time on your coffee maker. You set it for 7:30, you expect it to come on at 7:30. This is the difference between when you turn the pot on and start and set your settings to when it will actually begin cooking. It's not a time based on the clock. So if if I start my steel cut oats at 10 o'clock at night and I want them to come on at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to set this to 9 hours, because that's how I'm going to get to 7 o'clock from where I am when I first start the process for the countdown. There's also cancel and standby. You can plug in. It lets you know that when you plug it in, you'll get an off display on your pressure cooker, and you can press that then to stop or program and manual while it's operational. So if you made a mistake when you set the time and it's starting to cook, you just hit cancel and redo it again, and it's no big deal. There's also some of the pricier models have additional settings like cake. I don't know why you would want to make a cake in an Instant Pot, but you can do that. You can sterilize, like for baby bottles or canning jars or something like that, and it has some egg settings. There's settings are starting points, and you really have to customize them to what you're cooking. I don't find them that helpful, and you pay for more settings. But if you just think about, cooking lima beans versus red small chili beans, or green and brown lentils versus red or black. The first time I cooked lentils, I cooked some red lentils in that Instant Pot, and I made mush out of them. So it's a trial and error sometimes, and you can go online. There's a lot of information in terms of cooking times, and they'll vary quite a bit. But what I like to do is keep track of what works for me. I'll cook, like say, if I'm cooking lima beans, and I'll go look and see whatever other people have done, or in the manual that they give you with the pot. There are some cooking times listed there. and I'll try them. And if they're not quite done enough, I'll just restart it for a few more minutes. But I keep a log of it so that next time I go to cook those things, I'll know exactly what I'm going to get. Same thing with white rice versus brown rice. So like I say, these are the 3 settings that I use. I could do without the rest of them, but that's just my preference. Have a lot of models, too many, I think. Prices run from $60 to $200. And you can get, accessories, different types of steaming trivets. I've seen there's silicone rubber ones with longer handles or bigger that you can use extra pots and lids and air fryer attachments. This is the extra pot and lid, and these are very nice. If your kids have a hard time deciding what to get you for Christmas and you have one of these, this is a good suggestion. Have an extra pot and a lid. The lid is it's a silicone rubber lid, and it's very substantial. And when I cook my potatoes, when I batch cook them, I just take them out of the Instant Pot and let them cool. And then I'll put the lid on and set the thing in my refrigerator after it's cool. And then I'll use them throughout the week. It comes in very handy for that. There's also air fryer lids available, and they come in 2 different forms. This is a lid supplied by Williams of Sonoma, and it has a separate power cord, has a glass surface here. And then Instant Pot has its own lid designed specifically for some of the Duo models that have this air fryer feature. So it has a couple prongs where the lid fits down into the prongs and it gets the power from the main power source. So there's 2 different ways you can use, 2 different varieties here. I don't know. I thought about buying one of these. Like this one here, I think is about $90. But they're not really that convenient, I think. Especially if you're shorter and you have this thing sitting on your countertop and you got to lift it up and you got to set it down. These things are going to be hot while you do that. And you've got to get inside there and you want to take a spatula or something and move your French fries around so they get cooked evenly on all sides. And then you got to put this back on there. I don't see it as that much of a convenience, but it is an accessory and it is available. Some suggestions. Keep it simple. From my point of view, I would go with the simplest model. The more settings you have, you pay for them, and they can be confusing to some people. Like I said, manual is my preference. I keep a record to optimize my cooking time so I know exactly what I'm going to get. And because this is a system that's under pressure with stored energy, I would only replace components from certified dealers. Now you can replace all the gaskets and the vent valve and the float valve and the lid, but I would buy them directly from Instant Pot. I wouldn't go to eBay or Amazon. I would get them directly from the manufacturer. If you think you might be interested, want to try this, you can find them on Facebook at Marketplace and Craigslist for $30, $40. A lot of people get these things, and like I said before, they don't understand the cooking cycle and it's not what they expected, and so they get rid of them. Or somebody bought it for them as a gift and they really don't use it. A lot of them I see on there are unused. So it might be a way just to dip your feet in without a whole lot of money if you wanted to try it and see if it was for you. Now, Instant Pot supplies a whole line of safety equipment so that you can open the pot safely. No, I'm just joking, but let's take a look at the risks that are associated with the Instant Pot. we define risk as the probability of something bad occurring and the magnitude of the consequence. How severe of a consequence are you going to get? And if you look at the probability of something happening, you could say, well, how often do people use these things? And there's been 1.3 million sold since 2016. And there's only been a few incidences, which I'll discuss. So the probability is very low. And the consequences that I've seen were there were some thermal burns from steam and hot liquids being ejected, but nobody's died from it. And I wasn't able to find any records of a catastrophic failure similar to the one that I showed you in the earlier part of the presentation, the old style pressure cookers. But pressure vessels, people get scared because there is, and rightly so, I mean, there's stored energy in there, but we all have pressure vessels in our house. We have a hot water heater, which is basically a pressure vessel, and it has safety devices on it to prevent it from causing a problem. And it's the same way with the Instant Pot. I think the Instant Pot people have done a very good job of managing the risks associated with pressure. And safety engineers, when they look at a mechanical system, they look for levels of protection. And the more levels of protection that you have in a system, the greater the probability that they're going to function and prevent an incident. And we also like to look at active and passive safety devices. Like an active device would be like a temperature controller. So if the temperature reaches a certain point, a relay will activate and drop the temperature. And then there's passive devices like a pressure relief. So it would be something that would just pop open and there was no other mechanical action that would take place. A rupture disc would be an example of that. And the Instant Pot has several redundant features that both control temperature and pressure. Temperature and pressure are related because as you increase the temperature, you're going to increase the pressure. So they have several different safeguards to manage those. And also they use different devices in mitigating the same consequence. One might be for temperature, one might be a relay, and the other one might be a bimetal sensor that doesn't use electrical power, but will expand and contract and make a contact. So they use a variety of those. And you can get, if you have a high temperature warning, what happens? The heat will be automatically shut off. A fuse protects against overcurrent. So if there's some failure in the wiring and current starts to draw very quickly into the pot so that it doesn't overpressure, this fuse will blow and prevent a problem. There's pressure sensors which keep the temperature in the optimal range. The lid lock that I talked about earlier, that lid locking pin, provides so that you can't open the pot while it's under pressure. It has a leaky lid protection. So if the lid didn't seal properly, it will automatically, it'll time how long it takes for it to get up to pressure. And if it sees it's not reaching pressure, it will automatically switch to keep warm. The anti-blocking vent, there could be a scenario where you get a lot of, especially if you do a quick release on certain types of food, you could block that vent, and that vent has openings on the top and on the sides to prevent that, and that's why you clean it too after every use. But it minimizes the risk of that happening. We have temperature controls. The thermostat regulates it. And if the pressure is excessive by one of the pressure sensors, it will drop until it's in the safe range. Automatic pressure controls. There's a pressure switch in there. There's a disc that knows the pressure ranges. And if for some circumstances that the steam pressure exceeds 15.25 psi, it will automatically shut it down. It will excess pressure protection. If the pressure regulator does not work and high pressure creates a gap in the seal to release the steam and turns off the heat. Extreme temperature and power protection. If everything else fails, a fuse will disconnect the power if the temperature increases above 336 to 341 in that range there. We have pressure regulator. It will burp and control the pressure. So this is a very safe system as far as I'm concerned, and I have no qualms about using it. There have been some injuries and people have been hurt, and usually one injury that I looked at, people don't want the steam to go up on their cabinets and inside their kitchen, and they block that vent, and that's created some problems. They'll put a towel or something over that to catch that steam. That's a problem, and the manual recommends not doing that. And there's been sometimes that food particles have clogged the valves. So there's a couple things that have happened there. Filling over the max level. This is something that people have done, and it really is dangerous. Your pot liner has marks on it to tell you how far you can fill it. And if you're cooking foods that can expand significantly or foam, like beans will foam, and sometimes some pastas will foam. You want to keep that around 1/2 of the pot. You don't want to go too far. Like when I cook beans, I'll cook maybe 1 or 2 pounds, and I'll fill the pot with water to maybe 1 inch or so above that, and but I don't take it up past the halfway point. And if you try to do a quick release with these types of foam, with these types of foods, it's going to cause problems, and you're going to get that foam and that aerosol, and it's going to cause a lot of gunk in there, and it's not recommended to do that. It's better to use a natural release for those kinds of things. Also, you periodically, you should clean that sealing ring and change it. It's a good idea to do that. Silicone rubber is pretty resilient and it lasts a while, but the manual has some recommendations on that. So I bought an extra ring, and I have it on hand. The biggest risk that I've seen that could happen, and it's very low probability. I've only saw six or so injuries in some of the research that I did, is entrained steam in viscous liquids. And this is very rare. I mean, the probability is very, very low. Again, looking at the 1.5 million pots that were sold, and they're used continuously every day. But it has happened, so it's something to be aware of. And what I like to do, and I think I'll mention this later again too, is when I open the pot, I always rotate the lid after the pressure's released, and I keep the bottom of the lid down against the pot, and I rotate it up so that it acts as a shield in case something like this were to happen. Even though it's a low probability event, it's just a safety habit that I developed to provide some protection to my face and my chest. And but most of these incidents have occurred because people did not follow the manual or what the recommendations. And also, as you want to think about what you're doing, and I know it's difficult sometimes if you're planning a meal for a family and you're doing 10 different things, but if you start to open that lid and you start to feel resistance, it's just something to think about, that I would pause and wait and let it cool down some more before I went ahead and did that, because that's an unusual condition. That lid, when that float valve drops, that lid should just turn just like Teflon. It should be very easy to open. But just think about that as you're in that process. Like I said, injuries are rare and a very low probability of injury. I'm very comfortable with it. And like I said, I use it every day. Some of the common mistakes that people make while they're using the Instant Pot: not adding enough liquid. It's important that you have enough liquid in there to make steam. So I like to have use about 1 cup for 6 quart, and for the bigger pot, use a couple cups. Cooking food that requires crisping or bedding, it's just not going to happen there because you're cooking with moist steam. So you shouldn't really do that. If you're using dairy, it can scald and burn the bottom of the pot. For people that, again, are cooking for their family, they may want to go with a pot within a pot technique. You can put, I have a stainless steel serving mixing bowl that I put in there. I put a little bit of water. I put the water in the main liner, put that in, and then you can put some other things in there like dairy if you're going to use that, which we don't use, but and then you can do it that way. The Instant Pot is not a canner. It's not approved for that. Temperatures aren't controlled on that basis, so it would not do that. You shouldn't pick up that pot by the top handle. Even when the pot is hot, if you pick it up by that handle, even though the cooking process is ended, there's a possibility that because it could swing open. And so you always want to pick the pot up by the side handles, not the top. Storing the pot with the lid on, the gasket then can take a set, or odors that are inside the pot can continue to permeate. For some people, that was a problem for them. Not deglazing, I spoke about that before. It'll get a burn air. Forgetting to change the vent from seal. This is a very common problem. I've done it a couple times myself. Basically what I do is every time that I close that pot to start a process, I push that vent valve with my finger to make sure it's in the closed position. Other people have taken some white paint and put it in the closed position so they get a visual. That's not a bad idea. It's happened so often that the Instant Pot has, and on the newer models, when you close the lid, automatically goes from vent to seal. But it's not a big deal. It's just that the pot will not pressurize and it'll shut off. Underestimating the cooking times, we talked about that, cooking cycle versus cooking time. And we also mentioned foamy or high liquid volumes. You don't want to do quick release on them. And you don't want to do it on high volume liquids that can expand up into that vent valve. When you open the vent, then that stuff is going to come out, the soup or whatever, and it's going to cause a mess and you can get burnt. Don't overfill. Pulling the lid straight up, and I mentioned this about canting the lid so that when you take it up, that the bottom is closest to you and the top comes up, so that provides some protection. Adding thickeners too soon. Again, what you can do if you have to add thickeners, like sometimes I make chili and I want to add a thickener. After the cooking process is done, just take the pot and reset it to saute, take the lid off, add your thickeners, stir it up, and you're good to go. That's the best way to do it. Rather than, if you thicken it up too soon, you won't generate enough steam and it'll cause cooking problems. The lid, top of the lid can get hot, so you just want to bear that in mind. You don't want to touch it. If you use extension cords, you need to make sure they're rated for the wattage of the pot. And otherwise the extension cord can catch on fire, but they will also add resistance in the circuit and it will take longer to cook your food. I like to buy grains and beans in bulk. We have a co-op in Pittsburgh here that I use. And I store a lot of those in 5-gallon pails with Gamma Seal lids. This is the Gamma Seal lid. This has a gasket on both surfaces, on the inside of this one and on the inside of that one. This one is pounded down on top of the 5-gallon pail. And then this just screws in. It makes an airtight seal. It's a great way to store grains and beans. Why did I buy the pressure cooker? Well, Dennis Burkett made me do it. And probably most of you are not aware of Dennis Burkett, but he's a mentor of John McDougall. He was a head minister and leader in Uganda in the 50s and 60s. He was a man before his time. He oversaw 1,000 hospitals with many, many patients over 17 years. He never encountered any of the Western diseases that we see on a daily basis here. He didn't see any of these. And it just boggles my mind that this is back in the 50s and the 60s. And, you know, he measured, he did a little epidemiological research, had measured bowel movements, masses, and transit time. And the Ugandan diet contained 100 grams of fiber. It is a lot of fiber, 100 grams, where our average American diet, the standard American diet, is 15 to 25 grams. Theirs was 100. And he proposed that was the fiber that was really providing the major benefit. And if you read William Bussewitz's book on called Fiber Fueled, he confirms, you know, much of this. I mean, we know this stuff now. It's very common. People talk about gut health and fiber. And but back in the day, then nobody knew it. This is some of the beans and grains that I use. And the reason I bought it, the pressure cooker, was that some of these take a long time to cook. And I cook these in rotations. And you can see that barley has the highest fiber per gram on, and all the way down to the white brown rice with 0.04. But most of these are around 0.1 grams of fiber per gram. So I guess we're at the point of questions, and maybe we should get started with Brittany, because I went a little bit longer than I intended, but maybe we can
Yeah, let's get started. Let's move over to Brittany. I'm going to thank you, Phil. And we want to make sure that Brittany gets time to do a demonstration. It is going to be quick. I know she said it takes no time.
Well, she can continue a little bit past. I guess it won't hurt.
Yeah.
Can you guys see me?
Yeah, wait, you want to stop sharing?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we can. Okay.
Okay, and everyone can hear me all right? Good?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're good.
All right, well, I just wanted to add a couple of things into what Phil said. The first thing is to check out your local thrift stores. You will be so surprised to see how many Instant Pots show up there. I actually called Sally I think it was in the spring, and called her because I actually have 2 Instant Pots myself, and I thought somebody from Plant-Based Pittsburgh or herself could use an Instant Pot for like $10. I don't know how much it ended up costing you, Sally, but I think you went that same day and picked it up.
It was about $30-some, but I went to the drug, to the use.
And it was a big one too, I believe.
It was a full one, yes.
So check your thrift stores. Amazon does do awesome deals on them, you know, pretty affordably. Every once in a while, you'll start to see the big sales. So I personally have a 3-quart and I have an 8-quart. I skipped out for some reason on the 6-quart. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I use them and what, you know, we're going to make a recipe pretty quick tonight. So my 8-quart, I like to use when I'm having a lot of family over, if I am doing a potluck or something with a lot of people. Another reason I bought it was for the yogurt setting. So the small ones have yogurt, the new duo. I don't even know if I have the newest ones because I bought these a while ago. But most of them have a little yogurt button. And so you can make your own soy yogurt or other kinds of nut yogurt. And so in the big giant 8, I keep looking up there because that's where it's at. In my big giant Instant Pot, I like to make soy yogurt in it. And I actually have a video on the channel that walks you through how easy that is. And so that's one of the main features I use for that one. I find myself, because there's only 2 of us in my household, using my 3-quart a lot more. And it has great features. I mean, I would go also, you don't need to get the fanciest one. They make them newer and more buttons. And I find that the Duo is perfectly fine for everything I'm going to use. And most times I just use it on the manual setting, because I'm either making recipes, most times trying to figure out recipes in the Instant Pot. I will say, for anyone who likes to make their own recipes, this is definitely a big challenge. You know, I feel like when you create recipes from scratch, doing it in a slow cooker or even on the stove or in the oven, the Instant Pot is a little bit of a gamble. So, you know, I think be appreciative of those people that give you the Instant Pot recipes, because they've probably tried them a bunch of times with a bunch of fails as well. Can't really see what's going on when the lid's on, right? So it's a little bit more of a gamble coming them up with them, but there are so many online now that you can just even Google, and there's cookbooks, and so I would definitely try to use other people's recipes and you know, save the experimenting for when you've kind of become seasoned in this, I would say. I do make beans in it a lot from scratch. And I would say beans, the slow cooker, and then using manual and the yogurt button is probably the most that I use on mine. But there, you know, there's porridge and a bunch of other rice, just like Phil said, soups and things like that. So we're gonna get started. Real quick, there are 2 little extra things that you can buy for your Instant Pot that will make your life a little bit easier. One thing is a gadget. I was trying to find it when Phil was talking, but there is a gadget that you can buy on Amazon that goes over top of your ceiling vent, and it redirects steam. And I heard some people say they didn't want their kitchen counters or cabinets to be messed up from the steam. You can get something that will make it come out straight, but be mindful, again, when you're using it, that it's going to be coming out straight. So you don't want to walk in front of it or anywhere near it if you are doing that. So that's a really good idea, you know, to have. And they make all sorts of different ones that are different, cute little figures and everything else like that. Usually they're silicone that just fit over top of that. So that's a good idea. Again, if you don't want to mess up your cabinets, to have. I do have one floating somewhere here. The next thing I want to talk about is these like really awesome magnetic charts that you can get. So I actually have, they're on my refrigerator, so, and they're powerful magnets. They actually can just stick. I don't know why I don't have mine on my Instant Pot, but they can just go on your Instant Pot and stay there, or on your refrigerator. And you can buy them with little charts just to make your life easier of cook times. So this is by Plant-Based Dallas. She actually has, I think it comes in a pack of 2, if I remember. And they're just little cook charts or cooking charts with, this has all different kinds of vegetables, grains, beans, and again, some other things that you don't have to look up or Google. Okay. All right, so that's another little tip. You can buy these little Instant Pot magnets. We will get started. I have a bunch of Instant Pot recipes on my channel and on my website. Last year, I think I did almost a whole month of going back and forth between slow cookers and Instant Pot recipes for people that had Instant Pots and people that had slow cookers, so a little bit of both. And I find that I usually use the Instant Pot or slow cooker definitely around the fall when my life gets super busy. So it's really nice. Again, you know, I work from home, so I have the luxury of, you know, taking a lunch break and making sure I have food for dinner. But it is very nice when life just gets crazy, just to set it up and to kind of walk away from it and go somewhere else in my house while it's cooking. So I do love that. But we're going to get started on the recipe. You guys will get this tomorrow with the recording. So we're going to make an Instant Pot buckwheat pilaf. And I'm making it Thanksgiving themed. I'm gonna actually talk you guys through of how you can change up the seasoning so you can make it for whatever season it is when you're making this. And I just change up this recipe all the time to fit, again, what we're in the mood for and everything else. So what I'm gonna do is in my 3-quart, I have 1.5 cups of vegetable broth. This is a no oil vegetable broth. I'm gonna put that in first. And then I do have a little bit of red onion. So this is 1/2 cup of chopped red onion. You can use any onions you want. Now you can saute this before you put it in the Instant Pot. It's gonna cook when it cooks everything. So for me, a little easy hack I find, I'm not super picky with making sure that it's sauteed separately, is I just dump them in raw and they will cook and be awesome when it comes out. I did rinse our buckwheat, so I picked my grain of choice for this recipe, and I have buckwheat. You can find it in most grocery stores in the bulk section or order it online. And I just rinsed it really well, and I'm adding in 1 cup of raw buckwheat. Buckwheat, I picked it because it's a grain that I feel like most people don't try, or it's less common. So again, I'm always trying to get in different whole grains, different vegetables, different beans even, and you know, the more variety the better. So that's kind of my go-to for this one. And then I like to add a little bit of dried fruit to this. It kind of adds a savory and sweetness. So I have some dried cherries that I just get from Trader Joe's with nothing else in them. And you know, sometimes I leave it out, sometimes I leave it in. So this depends on what you're in the mood for, but I've also done this with, you know, you could chop up figs and put this, dried figs or apricots, and it just gives it a little bit of a different taste as well. So I have those over here. Just a little bit, it's not a lot. And then last up is our seasoning. So at this point, you can make it any time of year that you want. We've done this with, you know, onion and garlic and a little bit more smoked paprika and kind of mild flavors. Today I'm going to make this Thanksgiving themed. So some of you guys that are on our Facebook group heard me talk about Trader Joe's coming out with their Herbs de Provence blend around Thanksgiving. They always put this guy out. I usually buy a whole bunch because I like this all year. But it's a beautiful blend of, you know, thyme, rosemary, basil, sage. There's some lavender that I feel isn't too powerful. Some people are kind of divisive over the lavender added in. But I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of that, and that's going to give us, you know, kind of a Thanksgiving taste. I smell so good. I could sit here and smell it all day. So next time you're at Trader Joe's or in your grocery store, try to find this blend. It's really a favorite here. And you can use this like lots of different ways. But again,
Before.
What was the question? I missed that. Whoever got on mic. Okay, I'll keep going. If you come back on mic, if you have that question, I missed it. And then I just have a little bit of garlic powder as well. And really simple. If you want to add miso to be your salt substitute, I would do this at the end of it cooking. You know, I've learned a lot about miso since using it, and you don't want to put it in now because it would kill off a little bit of the probiotics that are in miso. So it's kind of best to stir it in when it's warm, not bring it up to pressure with everything in your Instant Pot. And so I'm just going to mix it with a spoon, and we're going to set it, and it'll be ready to go. But again, you can, at this point, you know, you can put Italian seasoning, you can make it whatever spices that you like. It's really just an awesome, you know, just a general recipe. I try to show you guys how I cook, and you know, the easy and simpler it is, the better. So let me grab a spoon. And then we're going to take it over to my plug so I can cook this. And so this will be my dinner, you know, tomorrow, and we'll be set. So I'm just getting all those spices mixed in. And this is, like I said, so easy. I love having an Instant Pot and a slow cooker at home. And then for this guy, it's going to get set for high pressure for 10 minutes, but we're gonna let it naturally come down. So we're gonna leave it alone. So really, in reality, like Phil was telling you guys earlier, it's probably closer to 40 minutes total, because it has to take a while to come up to pressure. It's gonna cook for 10 minutes, and then we're gonna let it come down to pressure. If you're in a rush, you can do it at 15 minutes, high pressure, let it sit for like 5 minutes on when it's coming down, and then you can quick release. But most times I try to just put it on for 10, and then I can walk away while it's finishing up. Yes, it's buckwheat groats are the raw version of buckwheat. Okay, so let me put all my, I actually cleaned this really thoroughly before this class. I cleaned both Instant Pots. So I gave them a nice soak today, so they're all beautifully cleaned. Good motivation to do this class. I had to fill the parts back together before it. And then if any of you guys come on Saturday's class, Sally's going to tell you about before we leave. I'm going to bring my Instant Pot and do a different recipe. And those of you guys that aren't in Pittsburgh and can't come in person, we're going to have a virtual link so you can watch on Saturday if you want, or get the recording if you sign up. And then there'll be another Instant Pot recipe for you guys that's a little bit different.
As Brittany said, I just wanted to chime in here that everybody who is on or registered will get an email from me tomorrow with how to sign up for the Saturday Zoom link. If you want to do it that way, it will give you information, but also a link to the recording. And yes, you will get the recipes somebody asked.
You guys will get it with the tomorrow. So I just put it up to, I hit pressure cook. It's at high pressure. I turned it up to 10 from what the number was at. I made sure I sealed it properly, and now I just leave it alone while it comes to pressure. So it does take a little bit of time for it to come up, and it'll take, roughly it'll take around, I would say 30 to 40 minutes total of letting it cook and come to natural pressure and then release. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes when you're cooking, I think a lot of the times we make out that the Instant Pot is like so fast. For some things, definitely like beans, it's a lot faster, but most times, it takes a little bit of time. So just be patient with it as it goes. But the nice thing is you don't have to babysit it, so you can go do lots of other things throughout your day. So I will also include a picture of the recipe real quick before I give it back over to Sally. I also included optional add-ins. So that's kind of a base recipe, but that's not really your complete meal. So what we usually do is we add cooked beans to it. So we have our whole grain, our cooked beans, and then I like to add lots of vegetables to it. So this is the time of year where I'm eating lots of Brussels sprouts. So maybe I'll, cook some Brussels sprouts, or even do shaved Brussels sprouts raw. Kind of depends on the mood, right? We might do pomegranate seeds or shredded carrots. I also like to do a little bit of crushed pumpkin seeds on top as a different texture, because you have the sweetness from that dried cherries as well. And then you can do steamed greens. We do a lot of kale, especially this time of year as well. So I like to steam up some kale and add that in. So this is a kind of base recipe, but I would do some add-ins to make it more of a complete meal. Does anyone have any questions?
There's just a few questions, and saying if we don't get them tonight, I'll put them in the email tomorrow. But let's see, what was the one? What dishes use low pressure? Linda says she never has used low pressure.
I've never used low pressure either. I would only say that the yogurt probably, even though there's a yogurt setting, it does, when you do yogurt in the Instant Pot, it doesn't come up to high pressure. So you don't have to worry about sealing yogurt per se. But that's one that just kind of gets to be a certain temperature, but doesn't come all the way up. So I don't know,
Okay.
something like that.
The steam function also uses low pressure.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And do you have to adjust the time for different size? 3-quart versus 6-quart?
It depends. I would say for the 3-quart to 6-quart, probably not. Just make sure you don't go over that fill line. If you're like doubling recipes, then you might have to adjust the time. But it's more of a big jump when you go from 3 to the 8.
Okay. And it does say what size it is, I'm sure, on the Instant Pot.
I don't know if it says it directly on it, but when
In
you
the
go to
box?
purchase it, I'm sure on the box, yeah, it would say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go, but Phil did a good job for someone who asked about the advantages at the beginning. So when I send the link, if you want to look at it and look at the advantage of Instant Pot, and Judy says that mine says on the back it's 6 quarts. So yeah, some models might say on the back. This was great. Obviously, lots of information and lots of questions. So I want to thank both Phil and both Brittany for really doing a fantastic job. And thank everybody who signed up. And we will see you soon. Okay. Bye, everyone.